Now we come to the second chapter of this book, this fourth book. Chapter 36 called Vedana-samyutta. Vedana is feeling. The first sutta I'll read is 36.3. Monks, there are these three feelings. What three? Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. That is neutral feeling. The underlying tendency to lust should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Stop here for a moment. So here, generally, when we have a pleasant feeling, there is a tendency to lust for it, to crave for it. And then when there is a painful feeling, there's a tendency to feel aversion for it, to be repelled by it. And then when there is neither painful nor pleasant feeling, neutral feeling, equanimous feeling, then we tend to be ignorant of it. We don't notice it. When a monk has abandoned the underlying tendency to lust in regard to pleasant feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion in regard to painful feeling, and the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling, then he is called a monk without underlying tendencies, one who sees rightly. He has cut off craving, severed the fetters, and by completely breaking through conceit, he has made an end to suffering. So the Buddha says a monk should get rid of the tendency to lust for pleasant feeling, the tendency to aversion toward a painful feeling, and the tendency to ignorance in regard to neutral feeling. This word lust, the other day someone asked about this greed, hatred and delusion, and then lust, hatred and delusion. This word lust, I think, doesn't necessarily mean in regard to sex. Lust means a strong greed, very strong greed. So it is lust. And then the verses follow. When one experiences pleasure, if one does not understand feeling, the tendency to lust is present, for one not seeing the escape from it. When one experiences pain, if one does not understand feeling, the tendency to aversion is present, for one not seeing the escape from it. The one of broad wisdom has taught, with reference to that peaceful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant. If one seeks delight even in this, one is still not released from suffering. But when a monk who is ardent does not neglect clear comprehension, then that wise man fully understands feelings in their entirety. Having fully understood feelings, he is stainless in this very life. Standing in Dhamma, with the body's break-up, the knowledge master cannot be reckoned. It's the end of the sutta. So how do we get rid of this underlying tendency? That is by cultivating samadhi. When our mind is very strong, then it is not easily moved by lust or aversion. The next sutta, 35.4, Buddha said, monks, when the unlearned ordinary worldling makes the statement, in the great ocean there is a bottomless abyss, he makes such a statement about something that is non-existent and unreal. This, monks, is rather a designation for painful bodily feelings, that is, bottomless abyss. When the uninstructed or the unlearned ordinary worldling is contacted by a painful bodily feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments. He weeps and beats his breast and becomes distraught. This is called an unlearned ordinary worldling who has not risen up in the bottomless abyss, one who has not gained a foothold. But monks, when the learned noble disciple is contacted by a painful bodily feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve or lament. He does not weep and beat his breast and become distraught. This is called learned noble disciple who has risen up in the bottomless abyss, one who has gained a foothold. And then the verse says, one who cannot endure the arisen painful feelings, bodily feelings that sap one's life, who trembles when they touch him, a weakling of little strength, who weeps out loud and wails. He has not risen up in the bottomless abyss, nor has he even gained a foothold. But one who is able to endure them, the arisen painful feelings, bodily feelings that sap one's life, who trembles not when they touch him, he has risen up in the bottomless abyss, and he has also gained a foothold. That's the end of the sutta. So the Buddha says, some people say there is a bottomless abyss in the ocean. The Buddha says there's no such thing. But the Buddha says painful bodily feelings, that is the bottomless abyss. And if an ordinary person contacted by painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves, and totally becomes distraught. He has not risen up from the bottomless abyss. But the learned noble disciple, when he is contacted by painful bodily feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. He bears the pain. Then he is called one who has risen up from the bottomless abyss. That's the end of the sutta. 36.5. Monks. There are these three feelings. What three? Pleasant feeling, painful feeling. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Pleasant feelings, monks, should be seen as pain. Pleasant feeling, monks, should be seen as painful. Painful feelings should be seen as a dart. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling should be seen as impermanent. When a monk has seen pleasant feeling as painful, painful feeling as a dart, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling as impermanent, he is called a monk who sees rightly. He has cut off craving, severed the fetters, and by completely breaking through conceit, he has made an end to suffering. One who has seen the pleasant as painful and the painful as a dart, seen as impermanent the peaceful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant, he is a monk who sees rightly, one who fully understands feelings. Having fully understood feelings, he is stainless in this very life. Standing in Dhamma, with the body's break-up, the knowledge master cannot be reckoned. That's the end of the sutta. So, if you remember when we discussed dependent origination, the 12 links of dependent origination, suffering arises because when there is a pleasant feeling, we crave for it. Because there is an underlying tendency to crave for pleasant feelings. So if you crave for pleasant feelings, then you have attachment, clinging, and clinging gives rise to bhava, this being. You feel that I am or I exist. And because you have this existence, I exist, then there is rebirth. So you want to break the chain of the 12 links of dependent origination. It is at feeling that we can break the chain, only at feeling. So feeling is very important. We should not be thoroughly overpowered by feeling. There are some people, they cannot control themselves totally. You can see very normal people, for example, when they eat good food, the food is good, they cannot control themselves, they indulge so horribly, almost like our dogs, when the dogs, you bring good food to them, the saliva will come down the mouth. So human beings are a bit like that. So unfortunately, people who cannot control their tongue, they cannot live long. Because even in the sutta, I remember the Kosala-samyutta, the Buddha told the Pasenadi king, restrain his eating, then he have a long life. I had a devotee in Penang, he could not restrain his eating, then he had a stroke. After that, for a few years he restrained himself. After a few years when he recovered, he could not restrain himself again. Before he reached 50, he passed away. So here the Buddha says, pleasant feeling should be seen as painful. This one, ordinary person will never see it this way. When pleasant feeling arises, if you have the wisdom, you know, you warn yourself, don't get attached to it. Because if you get attached to it, and then when you lose it, you are going to suffer. Which reminds me, one of our devotees in KL, He told me something. Told me a few years ago, he sent his son to Australia to study. The son went swimming, I think, and drowned. The only son, he had one son, I think, and two daughters. So the only son drowned. He and his wife suffered so much. And after that, he told me, after that experience, he dare not love his daughter so much. So he knows, just like this, pleasant feeling should be seen as painful. And then painful feeling should be seen as a dart. When we have painful feeling, it pokes us like a dart. And then neither painful nor pleasant feeling should be seen as impermanent. For example, if I get a good meditation and your mind is very equanimous, you feel very nice. But you should realize that it is impermanent, it will pass away. Don't attach to it. So if a monk sees feelings in this way, then he has cut off craving, severed the fetters, and he breaks through conceit that I am, and then he will end suffering. You see, sutras like this, we never think that we should see pleasant feeling as painful. That's why it's so good to study the Buddha's words. When we study the Buddha's words, all these words of wisdom, the Buddha is giving us a shortcut. If you didn't hear these words, you'll have to meditate many years and attain jhana before you realize this yourself. But here, the Buddha is telling us so that we see it clearly without even striving to attain it. The next sutta is 36.6. The Buddha said, monks, the unlearned ordinary worldling feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. The learned noble disciple also feels a pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Therein, monks, what is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the learned noble disciple and the unlearned ordinary worldling? And the monk said, Venerable Sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One, take recourse in the Blessed One. It would be good if the Blessed One would clear up the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember it. Then listen and attend closely, monks, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. Monks, when the unlearned ordinary worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments. He weeps, beating his breast and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, then they would strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by two darts. So too, when the unlearned ordinary worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments. He weeps, beating his breast and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Being contacted by the same painful feeling, he harbors aversion towards it. When he harbors aversion towards painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feelings lies behind this. Being contacted by painful feeling, he seeks delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the unlearned ordinary worldling does not know of any escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. When he seeks delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling lies behind this. He does not understand as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, danger and escape in the case of these feelings. When he does not understand these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling lies behind this. When he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. This monk is called an unlearned ordinary worldling, who is attached to birth, aging and death, who is attached to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, who is attached to suffering, I say. Monks, when the learned, noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve or lament. He does not beat his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, but they would not strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart. so that the man would feel a feeling caused by one dot only. So too, when the learned noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve or lament. He does not weep, beating his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, bodily one, not a mental one. Being contacted by that same painful feeling, he harbors no aversion towards it. Since he harbors no aversion towards painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feeling does not lie behind this. Being contacted by painful feeling, he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the learned noble disciple knows of an escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. Since he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. He understands as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, danger and escape in the case of these feelings. Since he understands these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. This monk is called a noble disciple who is detached from birth, aging and death, who is detached from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, who is detached from suffering, I say. This monk is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the learned noble disciple and the unlearned or ordinary worldling. The wise one, learned, does not feel the pleasant and painful mental feeling. This is the great difference between the wise one and the worldling. For the learned one who has comprehended the Dhamma, who clearly sees this world and the next, desirable things do not provoke his mind. Towards the undesired he has no aversion. For him, attraction and repulsion no more exist. Both have been extinguished, brought to an end. Having known the dust-free, sorrowless state, the transcender of existence rightly understands. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says that the difference between an ordinary worldling and an Aryan disciple is that the ordinary worldling is struck by two darts. One is the body pain, the other one is the mental pain. Whereas the Aryan disciple is only struck by one dart, bodily suffering. So why? Because the Aryan disciple, he understands the Dhamma. He understands that everything arises from causes and conditions. And because they arise from past causes and conditions, there is nothing much you can do about it. We can only plan for the future. We can only do something now to affect the future. We cannot change what is happening now because what is happening now is karma vipaka mainly. Causes and conditions from the past has been set in motion so that whatever causes conditions that we generated in the past are now the results coming to us. So because we understand this, then whatever comes our way, we accept it. We accept it that this is our fate. So that being the case, when we suffer, we don't have mental suffering because we don't think so much about it. For ordinary people, when suffering comes, they cannot accept it, you see, because they don't understand. Because they don't understand, they cannot accept things. So then they have bodily suffering plus the mental suffering. The mental suffering is made by themselves because of proliferation of thoughts, because of not understanding the Dhamma, and because their mind is not cultivated to be strong. So there's a difference between an ordinary person and a learned noble disciple. So a noble disciple, if he feels a pleasant feeling or so, he feels it detached. He makes himself detached from it because he understands if he attaches to it, it will be a source of suffering in future. So when he feels a painful feeling or so, he feels it detached. It's not that he does not have the pain. He has the body pain. But he does not multiply the pain by thinking about it and getting mental pain as well. So when there is a neutral feeling also, he understands. So that's the end of the sutta. So for tonight I'll end the sutta here. This chapter on feelings also is quite important to understand. Yes. Oh yes. Because they say that you are concentrated one object after another, so they call it vipassana jhana. But the Buddha never talked about vipassana jhana, so it's created by these vipassana monks. That is not jhana at all. Jhana, there's only one jhana. There is the Buddha's jhana, not the vipassana jhana. And the description of jhana is very clear in the suttas. How you attain the jhanas and the states of the jhana. Description of all the jhanas are given very clearly in the suttas. In the case of the vipassana jhana, the 5 hindrances are not eliminated, so how can it be jhana? Yes, it is a method, but then without cultivating your mind, it's very difficult to actually practice it. Just like we say, we like to radiate metta, but if your mind is not strong, you are not actually radiating metta. And also, because your mind is not strong, sometimes you think you want to radiate metta, but somebody says something nasty, immediately your metta has vanished. So unless your mind is strong, it is one thing to say you want to practice something. It's another thing whether you can do it or not. That's the purpose of bhavana. Bhavana means development of the mind by meditation. Meditation in the Buddha's suttas always refer to the jhanas. There is no other meditation other than the jhanas in the Buddha's teachings, because in the Majjhima Nikaya, Ananda said the type of meditation praised by the Buddha is the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and fourth jhana. And the type of meditation that the Buddha does not praise at all is the type of meditation where the 5 hindrances are not eliminated. So if you practice any meditation and you don't get rid of the 5 hindrances, that is not Buddhist meditation at all. You have to do both together, because this theory and practice, you need both together. That's why study of the suttas, we combine with the meditation practice. So we progress in both ways. Actually, in the one of the Satipatthana Samyutta suttas, the Buddha told one of his monk disciples that 2 foundations are necessary before he practice meditation. One is sila, keeping good moral conduct. The second foundation is right view, because right view comes from understanding the suttas. So after you have attained these 2 foundations, then only the Buddha says you practice the Satipatthana meditation. Proliferation. Proliferation means proliferation of thoughts. Useless proliferation of thoughts that lead to a lot of views. Like, where did I come from? After death, where will I go? Who made me? Who made this world? And all this. The Buddha says, arises because of the conceit I am or I exist. Once you have the concept, the conceiving that I exist, then you start asking questions. You have all these views. Where did I come from and all these things. And the other word you said is what? Contemplation. Contemplation is reflection. Like when we study the Buddha's words, then we reflect on it, contemplate on it, we digest it. So they are different. Contemplation is skillful application of the mind, wholesome application of the mind. But the other one, proliferation, is unskillful application of the mind, unbeneficial application of the mind. Say again. Yeah, by studying the suttas. Study the suttas will give you a lot of ammunition to investigate the 5 aggregates. And then when you study the suttas, you reflect on it, you try to understand the Buddha's words. And if you are able to understand most of the Buddha's words in the suttas, then you would have attained right view. And when you attain right view, you have already become an Arya. Which Samyutta? Lakhana. In the Buddha's teachings, the original Buddha's teachings in the Nikayas, nobody can help another person to go for rebirth. Even the Buddha also cannot help anyone to go for rebirth. If the Buddha can, then he would have helped all the beings in the woeful plains to come out of hell by, for example, making a vow, like they say, Amitabha Buddha made a vow. And the only way we can help these beings in the other realms of existence, the Buddha says, is like in that sutta where Brahmin came to ask the Buddha. He said the Brahmin practice, when their relative passes away, they offer food and they burn the food. Do the relatives actually get it? And the Buddha says only ghosts can get it. And I assume that must be because only ghosts come back to their relatives to wait for merit. So only ghosts we can help. The other realms, they whatever you do here, they are not even aware of it. For example, a being in hell, like you do Chao Tu or whatever, this liberation of beings, they have no knowledge of it. If they have no knowledge of it, how can they be helped? We don't have a psychic power. Even if we have psychic power, also we still cannot help them in the Buddha's teachings. So we must remember, in Chinese Buddhism was very much influenced by Taoism, because in the year 511, the Emperor Liang Wuti, he commanded that monks and nuns in China must not eat meat. And he made that command because he was a Taoist before. At the age of 40, he came to Buddhism. So he had a lot of Taoist concepts in him. So he noticed that Buddhist monks ate what we call Misiku Tao Jia, whatever types of crops also they eat. So he compared them with Taoist monks. Taoist monks seem to be very pure in the food. So when he commanded that Buddhist monks and nuns are not allowed to eat meat, that changed the lifestyle of monks and nuns totally, because after that command, the monks and nuns could not go and beg for their food, because when they go and beg for their food, they have to eat whatever is given, and most of the time people are not vegetarians, so they could not get vegetarian food. That being the case, they had to start cooking the food, and when you start cooking the food, that is against the Buddha's Vinaya, the Buddha's precepts for monks and nuns. And then not only that, they have to look for money to buy the food. That also is against the monks' precepts and nuns' precepts. So when they want to look for money, they have to follow the footsteps of the Taoist priests. They have to do chanting. So they start to do chanting just like the Taoist priests, and use instruments just like the Taoist priests, ting ting tong tong and all that, which the Buddha did not allow monks and nuns to do. So after a while they find that they cannot keep the most of the Vinaya precepts, they could not keep at all. Then they say Fang Pian, expedient means, Bodhisattva vows and all that, which the Buddha never talked about. They introduced Bodhisattva vows. And some of the Bodhisattva precepts are totally against the Vinaya also, and the Dhamma, the Suttas also. So that's what happened. So because of that, they did all this chanting, and they adopted this. It's a Taoist belief that you can help beings out of hell. So they also created this concept that you can help beings out of hell. It's not a Buddhist concept. It is a Taoist concept, just like Feng Shui, this geomancy. Nothing to do with Buddhism. It is from Taoism, but it crept into Buddhism. So that some Mahayana monks also, they practice geomancy, Feng Shui. So there are a lot of things in Chinese Buddhism which is not actually Buddhism. Is contaminated. Sometimes with Chinese culture also. Chinese culture also has crept into Chinese Buddhism. So this Chao Tu has nothing to do with original Buddhism, liberation of beings from hell. Nobody can help beings come out from hell. If at all, this Chao Tu and all this, like they have this Mahayana Chinese Sutra that says that Mahamoggallana helped his mother out of hell. If that is possible, that all the Buddhas would have helped all the beings out of hell. But now we find the beings in hell, they have not reduced, they're still the same. The beings in the ghost realm also still the same. Beings in the animal realm also still the same amount. So who is helping who? Nobody is helping anybody. Buddha says that actually nobody can help another person. Nobody can bless another person. Even the Buddha cannot help us. That's why the Buddha said that the Buddhas only show the way, just indicate to you the way. Which way you want to walk is up to you. Why the Buddha cannot help us? Because the world is a creation of our mind. Our mind creates our world. Just like when you are in a nightmare, you're having a nightmare in your dream. Nobody can enter your dream and help you. You are having the nightmare you created yourself. So the karma we create gives us the nightmare of life. So when we create evil karma, we see ourselves lifetime after lifetime suffering. Create good karma, then you see yourself happy. That's why the Buddha says in the Vedana-samyutta that we should see consciousness as a show. As a show, consciousness creates this show. We see ourselves like in a movie, series of movies. One lifetime after another lifetime.
Some information that whatever is happening now is due to past karma, and whatever we do will affect our future. We are creating the karma for the future. Now, with past karma, how by we can marry now we are being married, and we do things and all this is achieved using up the karma for the future. And how to utilize the past karma, accept the past karma, there is a
Yes, the Buddha says that we can mitigate, lessen the effect of our past unwholesome karma by doing a lot of good deeds now. If we do a lot of good deeds now, then that gives us instant happiness. And then when you are happy, then you don't think about your unhappy states. Because actually karma ripening is we think about, we remember, the evil that we did, and then remorse arises. And remorse gives us suffering. So if you don't remember your past deeds, then it doesn't ripen, your karma does not ripen. That's why the Buddha says, if we keep doing a lot of good deeds now, then we are happy. We're happy, you don't think of the evil that we did, it does not surface. That's why in the Dhammapada, the Buddha says that mind is the forerunner of all states. So the mind is very important. How we perceive things, we perceive wrongly, you suffer for it. You perceive rightly, and you're happy. Generally, our life is governed by karma vipaka, okay? But not all suffering is due to karma vipaka. Why? The Buddha says in the sutta, I think we will be coming to it, that the Buddha says, for example, if your body is giving you pain, it might be because you have too much phlegm, or you might have too much bile, or you may have too much wind in your stomach. And these things are maybe because of the food you ate, you ate too much curry, or something, too much chili or what. And another one is the imbalance of the tree, when the tree are not well balanced, also give you body pain. And sometimes because of carelessness, then sometimes because of chance, external happening, accident, for example. For example, sometimes some people, they go on the road, then they have an accident and they may die. So I think if that person dies because of karma vipaka, then that person will not be reborn as a human being. Because of karma vipaka, his blessing or what is used up. So he does not have the blessing to be reborn as a human being. But if it's due to accident, so it's not due to karma vipaka. So he suddenly dies, then he did not finish his using up his blessings. He still has blessings to be a human being. Then he'll probably be reborn back as a human being again. That's why there are some people, after they pass away, they come back to the human world. Some people, they go down to the ghost realm. But the Buddha says most people, after they die, they will go down to the ghost realm. A few, because of great evil deeds they have done, they go to the animal and the hell realm. But most people, after we die, because we have used up our good karma as a human being, then we will go to the ghost realm. The difference between the ghost realm and the human realm, the blessings is not too great. There is a sutta describing, giving a simile for the 5 realms of existence. The Buddha says, if a man walking a long distance and he's lost and he's hungry and he's thirsty and he's tired, then suddenly he falls into a hole, a big deep hole which is higher than his height. So he cannot climb out of the hole, and that hole is filled with burning embers, charcoal burning. So he gets burned, he's struggling to come up, he cannot come up. So that is a simile for the hell realm. And then for the animal realm, the Buddha says, the same man walking long distance, tired and hungry, he fell into a shit hole full of shit, excrement, and the hole is deeper than his height, and he also cannot climb up, and he's struggling and eating shit. That's the simile for the animal realm. And then the simile for the ghost realm is that this man walking a long distance, tired and hungry, comes and he sees a tree. He's so happy, he rests under the tree. But unfortunately, the tree does not have much leaf, so he still feels the sun, the heat of the sun. But he's able to get a bit of rest, but not good rest because of the hot sun. And the simile for the human realm is that this same man walking a long distance, he comes upon a very shady tree, full of leaves, and then he goes under the tree. He's not burned by the sun, so he's able to rest under the tree, and he's very happy resting on the tree. That's the human realm. So you see the difference between the human and the ghost, not that much difference. Right? Both go under the tree, only thing one has more shade, one has less shade. And then the heavenly realm is like this person, he walks a long distance, then suddenly he comes upon a huge mansion. He enters the house and it's full of luxurious items. And then he sleeps on the bed, he drinks, he helps himself to the food, everything, and he's very happy in that house. He doesn't want to leave that house. That's the simile for the Deva realm. Okay, so we end here tonight.